whether they have anxiety, whether they have social anxiety, whether they have depression, your body is working at all times to keep you protected and at its level of perceived safety. And so rather than trying to fix yourself, you'll be better off trying to understand and more deeply connect to yourself.
Hey everyone, it's Lynn, and you're listening to Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work is on a mission to equip senior leaders with tools they need to be a true quantum leader and actually understand what that means. Improve employee engagement, retain top talent, and transform your workplace culture to have less drama and stress. So let's start making magic. Hey everyone. Welcome to another episode of Create Magic at Work. Today I have a special guest in the house for all of you. Her name is Lauren Dike. Lauren is a certified somatic practitioner, nervous system resilience expert, and DEI consultant dedicated to fostering safety, openness, and connection with organizations and individuals. Her work helps organizations evolve by witnessing behaviors rather than shaming them, understanding that behaviors incongruent with compassion, openness, and connection often stem from stress, trauma, or lack of capacity. By addressing these root causes, Lauren enables transformative behavior change, making authentic connection and collaboration more accessible. She specializes in working with Black women, focusing on the disproportionate workplace and racial trauma they face. Lauren partners with collectives like Iconi Collective, Criado Studios, Black Girl Code, and the Center for Black Women's Wellness to create spaces for healing and empowerment through somatic practices, workshops, and speaking engagements. We've talked a lot about the nervous system on some Create Magic at Work episodes. So Lauren, welcome to Create Magic at Work. I'm excited you're here and to hear what you have to share with all of us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
So for new listeners or for those of us that aren't familiar with what a somatic practitioner is, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, sure. So somatic exercises, somatic movement, the word soma comes from the Greek word that just means of the body. And basically it involves utilizing and working with the body to release stress and discharge trauma. So I think what a lot of people don't realize, or a lot of people try to do, is intellectualize stress. So things like anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, feeling isolated. They try to talk their way out of it. But what we know from science is that our nervous system is the epicenter of how we perceive safety and danger. And so if we perceive danger, we will go into an activated stress mode, which can like fight, flight, freeze, or shut down. But if we sense safety, we'll be in a more open state, and we'll go over that later, but ventral vagal. And so it's crucial to work with the body when you're talking about stress and trauma, because the body accesses 80% of the resolve of that stress or trauma, since it's a physiological aspect or symptom of stress.
So for all of us listening, if we feel like we've experienced some stressful situation in the workplace, you're saying that just talking it out is not enough. Am I hearing that correctly?
Right. And not that I should reframe that, but it is not going to be as effective as addressing the body first. So the brain talking only addresses 20% of your stress response. 80% of it comes from the body. And so if you're able to regulate or discharge the stress and trauma from your body before you do things like talk therapy or talking with a loved one, it's going to be more effective, and you're less likely to go through loops and circles and trying to resolve it because you've gone to the root cause.
I think that's interesting. Just personally, I think it's interesting because I have experienced, I don't think talking is enough, right? And I sometimes think that, especially in the workplace, we can get into a space where we're venting, and then the venting can end up becoming not productive if it lasts for a really long time. And if we're not doing anything else, I don't know if that resolves. And so I like talking about this because it adds this other component where it's covering you all the way around. Okay, I'm gonna go off track because I have all these thoughts on this. But okay.
Okay, yeah.
So before I go off track because of all my thoughts on this, what are some common signs that we would see within ourselves that our nervous system is not regulated? And when I think of a dysregulated nervous system, sort of like what you said a little bit ago, it's more than this, but I mean, to break it all the way down, isn't it like where you're feeling like the fight, flight, or freeze? Is that the dysregulated nervous system?
Yeah.
Okay. So on the dysregulated nervous system, if it's the fight, flight, or freeze, I guess break that down for us a little bit more. Like, how do we know we're dysregulated? How do we even know we're in a dysregulated state in the workplace?
Yeah. So when we talk about being dysregulated, it means being activated in the presence or without the presence of an actual stressor. So anytime that you're feeling anxiety, freeze, fawn, immobilization, and there is no physical danger, your nervous system is dysregulated because you haven't taught it to tell the difference between emotional overwhelm and physical threat. And so if we think back to archaic times, or we've had the same nervous systems as animals in the wild, right? So our nervous systems are designed to either mobilize us to get us away from a threat or immobilize us to play dead from the threat. And so if you think about that, when we get a nasty email, right, or we get in a fight with a significant other, our nervous system is doing these things to get us away from a physical threat when it's really just an emotional sense of overwhelm. And so this is a lot about what this work is. It's talking to your body, right? And telling your body it's safe. Like, this is a lot. This is overwhelming, but I'm not in physical danger. So you don't have to do all of these extra things to protect me. Because what happens is there's actually survival energy that's going to the body, right? We know that cortisol and adrenaline pump in the body designed to shoot out to your limbs to get you to run away from an object, right? And so if you're not discharging this energy or releasing this energy, it gets stuck in your body and it causes things like issues, mental health issues. The other thing that happens is that your neocortex, or the rational part of your brain, goes offline. So you're just left with your reptilian brain that's irrational and over emotional. And so that's why when you are dysregulated, it affects your emotional, physical, and mental health. Now, how you can tell if someone is dysregulated, typically there's different symptoms and cues for different states. So if you are in fight or flight, there's mobilized energy inside of you, right? So you're going to look fidgety, right? Your eyes might be scanning for danger. You might be talking fast, right? You might literally be shaking. When you are in dorsal vagal or shutdown, it's looking like succumbing and wanting to hide. So usually it's people with bad posture, talking slower, looking removed, being disengaged. And then when we talk about functional freeze and fawning, those are blended states. So you're going to see a little bit of both of those characteristics. So there's literally physical cues that you can look out for people. And then when we talk about organizations as a whole, it's like thinking about how that plays out at a wider level, right? So for example, when you're saying venting is a sign that people don't feel safe to use their voice to the people that have influence over the decision making, right? It's a sense of being either in a fawning state or a freezing state, right? So that's dysregulation, right? Anytime someone doesn't feel the capacity to speak up for themselves and set boundaries, they're in a stressful state. And then when you're looking at the physical aspects, right? Increased sick days, disengagement from either employee surveys or just in meetings in general, groupthink, all of these things are when people don't feel safe enough to assert themselves, and the effects of stress is literally wearing down their bodies.
Yeah. What this group think that you mentioned, when you were sharing, I started thinking of toxic positivity in the workplace and in these spaces that we're in where you have to always be positive. You have to always say the positive thing. You have to always, otherwise, it's just that group think where you'll stand out in a bad way. And you might not get that promotion because people will think you're negative or you're not behind some sort of project. So that is interesting to me, how you mentioned groupthink and how it can affect us traumatically in that way. That was an example that I thought of because I've seen it and I've experienced it where people are afraid to then speak and be assertive because of the backlash when and at the end of the day, what I've seen that do is really shut down creativity and innovation because the people in the room that make the decisions don't get to hear all of these different viewpoints to move things forward on a project or for productivity or profitability in a positive way. So if we're in an environment where we're feeling, and I can, you know what, I can see this for entrepreneurs too, just from a workload standpoint, feeling burnt out and shutting down just from that piece too. So on that note, what are some ways, could you share like one tip with us, an exercise or a technique that we can do where if we feel like we're not feeling good right now, what could we do to help release some of that tension or to get us back to feeling at center? Or like what I like to call the green state, kind of like the green light. You're just, you're going and everything feels amazing.
Yes, the green light.
Yeah. Not the red or the yellow.
Exactly. So that's a great question. And the thing about somatic work in the different states is that depending on what state you're in, you're going to need something different. Because remember, when we shut down, our body is immobilizing. When we have anxiety, when we have that anger, our body wants to mobilize. And so, depending on what you feel, you could need a different movement. But what I like to do if I don't know what someone's state is start them with a movement that's for people that are in that free state because it will work for everyone. And so the first thing you want to do is ground yourself in the present moment. Tell your body that you are in the present moment because what's happening is your mind is going elsewhere, thinking that it's literally in physical danger. It's literally being chased down by a tiger. So if you can bring your body and your focus to the present moment, it can allow yourself to reorient and understand that you're safe. And so the way I like to do this is literally just creating physical sensations on the body. So whether it's rubbing your hands together or rubbing your arms, that's a great way to tell your body, I am here, I am safe. You wouldn't be doing this if you were being chased down, right? Um, and then also utilizing eye movement because that's really powerful. When we are in a state of fight or flight or even shutdown, our vision narrows because we're trying to focus in on our threat. So if we can widen our vision by looking side to side, again, what that's doing is it's starting to tell your body it's safe. You're also reorienting to your four walls around you. And again, you're telling your body, I am in this moment. I am safe. There's nothing to worry about.
You know what's so cool with that is when you're talking about the expanding your viewpoint, that's what I'm calling it, like expanding your viewpoint. So you went from being lasered in to a threat to like seeing a big picture view. That's literally like a physical thing you can do that is an example of ego versus higher self. Like if you're operating from ego, you're like scanned in on a threat or you're defensive or you're afraid, and higher self can like tap back into wisdom, compassion, love, see the bigger picture here, tap into more creative options rather than fight, flight, or freeze. Help talk to a higher power if you believe in it, or your higher self, which is that place I referenced. So that's really, I love that one. Thank you for sharing that. Anything else on that?
So I would say that's a good starting point. But again, for some people coming out of shutdown, or if you run more anxious, what's going to happen is once you start to regulate from a place of shutdown, you might feel this anxious energy come up because it was either suppressed or you bypassed it. So if that happens, you can move. So I like just shaking the body. So whether it's tree shaking, so goalposting your arms and then just shaking your arms up and down, or literally just like shaking the body by jumping, running in place. That's a great way to discharge that survival energy and to teach your body like it's mobilizing, it's fulfilling or satisfying what the survival energy wants to do. And then after that, always ending with some sort of breath work. So either box breathing where you inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, do a few rounds of that, or just taking deep inhales through the nose, exhales through the mouth to just ground yourself after that discharge has happened.
Really good. Really good. A lot of executive coaches, myself included, incorporate some of this work in session, breathing, shaking something off after talking about it. And I think that's important to highlight here is that it's not one or the other. It's not talk therapy. It's not coaching. I think combining the two is really beneficial, because sometimes even in session with a client, if they're really verbally processing something, at the end of session, if we're at the end, it's like, "Hey, okay, you've gotta go do something with your body here because you just verbally processed a lot of things about your work or about your boss or whoever, and you need to go shake this off." Because for me, from the spiritual lens, I know we're talking about the neuroscience of this, but from the spiritual lens, it's like all of these words came out of you and they're circulating all around. And what are you going to do with this now? You've got to clear it. You've got to clear that energy. And so this is a way to clear the energy and also, from a neuroscience lens, reset your nervous system, which is really cool because you're giving things that we can do right then and there. We don't have to wait till we're off to go to the gym or to, it's like I can shake right now. I can expand my vision to the walls around me, and I can start feeling a little more calm and a little more centered and not like I'm operating from my ego.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to pivot the conversation a little bit because a lot of your work focuses on Black women in the workplace. And I think it's really important to hear what that's about and to hear what are some of the key challenges they face and how can organizations support them and their healing.
Yeah. So my work with Black women selfishly started from my own journey. Often growing up, I was the only Black child in the classroom. And then when I got to corporate America, I started off in real estate finance, which is a really white male dominated field. And I always had this cognitive dissonance of like feeling really unsafe in spaces, but then no one actually doing, and this was my experience, right? Because there is harm that's actually done in the workplace towards Black women, but no one actually doing anything to set me off. Like, yeah, I had a few microaggressions here and there, but no one was outwardly trying to make me feel uncomfortable. And it was this thing of like, I know I should feel okay, but I just don't. And so through my own healing journey and through understanding the nervous system, I understand how much of my racial trauma, and even some workplace trauma, factored into my workplace experience and current roles, whether it was DEI or in corporate America. And what we know about Black women is that everyone has intergenerational trauma, but especially being descendants of slaves and what our grandmothers and mothers went through, and that healing wasn't an option, right? That trauma gets carried down or passed down intergenerationally through the womb. And we know that Black women are susceptible to something called misogynoir. So it's anti-Blackness and anti-woman. So if we think about the different stereotypes that are around for Black women, like being the angry Black woman, right? Having to work twice as hard. There's different tropes and stereotypes that are both a reality and a threat. And so it becomes stressful to exist because it's like, this could be something that people are thinking or it could not be. And I have racial trauma. It's this confusing existence and it weighs on you. And Black women have the highest allostatic load, or another way of saying wear and tear of stress in our bodies than any other demographic. Is causing us to live 3 years shorter than white women and is leading different health disparities related to stress. And so it's so important to me to focus on the healing and restoration of Black women because it becomes exhausting just to exist. It becomes nerve-wracking to be in white spaces because of the reality of what is, but also because of intergenerational and pervasive stressors like racism. And so for me personally, and for my Black women clients I've worked with, using a somatic approach has been transformational because, again, we know that trauma is stored in the body, right? Our implicit memory is in place, and our explicit memory, or the memory of our brain, goes offline because it's all within sensations of the body. And so, if we can address the sensations in our body tied to trauma, we can start to discharge it and hold more capacity for it and go on to live a more fulfilling life. And there's naysayers that say, oh, we can't heal until systems are fixed. But what we do know about our emotional well-being and our emotional experience is that if we can change at least one of three things, we can greatly change our well-being. And so it's either environment, our perception of stress, or our physiological response to stress. And so you see, we can't always change our environments, but we can change our physiological response to stress, how our body recovers from it, and also our perceptions, right? When we talk about microaggressions, it's the act of being triggered, and there's larger systems at play that allowed those microaggressions to exist. And so if I can think about, okay, I'm responsible for the way I'm getting triggered and the way my body's getting activated. Yes, these systems that allow this to exist suck, but I have great control over the way my body reacts and the way I perceive the stressor, because it isn't life-threatening. So that was a long-winded way of answering your question, but hopefully I did.
Yeah, you did. I think that's really amazing that you're sharing that. And I think it's really interesting. It feels very empowering energetically to me. And it also feels like it could shift the system energetically. Because if we're starting with ourselves and we're starting to regulate our nervous system, and then we have different responses, and we're focusing on what we can control, that feels very hopeful to helping shift these systems as well energetically, because we're showing up differently. Those were my thoughts as you were sharing. All right, it's time for a fun, playful, quick break. And it's time for you to discover your spiritual intelligence at work. So over here at Create Magic at Work, we are not just a great podcast. We are an executive coaching firm, a team dedicated to helping leaders like you create healthier, more fulfilling workplaces. Whether it's through private coaching, transformative workshops, or impactful keynotes, we're here to help support your journey to have less drama and stress and more magical moments in your life. So have a little fun. Take our quick quiz in the show notes and see where you stand. Discover your spiritual intelligence at work. Click on the link in the show notes and reach out to us for support if you need it. Sending magic to you. Well, I wanted to ask you, because I know when we were talking before, you mentioned, and these self-care recommendations are like, they fall short for Black women. And I would imagine they fall short for others as well in some way, because you can't just bubble bath and massage your way away. Well, maybe massage if it hits those trauma points, but you know what I'm saying. So the tools for healing in this way, what would quote unquote a self-care tool be that someone could use that would actually facilitate healing?
Yeah, I think, tools is a word that to me it signifies something external, whereas my work is all about mastering your internal. And so if you can if you can start to master your own unique nervous system and your responses and your patterns, you start to shift the way you show up in the world. And so literally just checking in with yourself multiple times a day, right? And not from a cognitive standpoint, but like, how is my body feeling? Like, where's there tension? Where's there contraction? Where's there relaxation? What is it trying to tell me? Then you start to get really good at moving in a way that agrees and accessing your highest intelligence, right? So I think when we're talking about doing things like yoga, doing things like meditation, doing things like talk therapy, those are amazing, but it's about the way that you're approaching it, right? If you're just doing yoga to look like the best bender in class and to just move through it and to have it to be a checkbox, you're not going to connect to it somatically to understand what the sensations in your body are telling you, right? If you're doing meditation as a point to just like escape and say, okay, I can't feel this anxiety anymore, let me just breathe it away, it is not going to be productive for you, because there's actually studies that show that if you are super dysregulated, meditation can actually trigger PTSD and psychosis. And so sometimes meditation is like step 2 or 3 for people. But also, again, if you're approaching it as a checklist item and not getting attuned to your body and understanding what your body wants to tell you, it's effective, but not as effective in actually healing and moving the needle and changing your patterns and your reactions. And so a great part of this healing is an awareness, right? For me, I am a recovering, and still can be at time, fawner or people pleaser, right? I reflexively perform to appease others because that feels safest to me. And so a lot of the times it's just me before meetings, literally like pushing away my computer screen and causing this barrier to say like, okay, all this is mine. I don't have to act the way someone else wants me to act. Sometimes I'm doing it and I'm just noticing, okay, like, ooh, I didn't feel safe in that moment. How could I like give my body what it needs after this? And sometimes it's like just like a self hug. So I think people think that healing have to be these grand gestures and these initiatives, but it's really just a really simplistic way of coming back to ourselves and like avoiding all this technology and jargon that is complicated being human.
I love it. Yeah, when you were saying like push it away for a little bit, I also thought, and say no and don't volunteer to fix everything. And when you notice there's a problem, don't always be the one to jump it. Yeah, all of those things, right? That with the people pleaser and the exhaustion that comes from overgiving. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a tough question here. If I'm a leader in the workplace and I have numbers to hit, I have a team to run, I have profits I need to drive, I have shareholders I need to answer to, why is this important to me? Why should I care?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first, I would say I don't like to say shoulds because it's provoking, right? Like we know about the nervous system, all behavior is served to keep the people safe, right? And so everyone's operating the way they are because they want to perceive safety. But what I would say is how it can enhance culture is the fact that when people are dysregulated, when they're super stressed, remember we talked about before, our neocortex goes offline, right? We aren't accessing our highest intelligence, our focus, our ability to be productive. And so when people are constantly walking around stressed, they're operating from the reptilian high alert place of their brain. And so they aren't going to be as effective mentally. And after all, that wears you down physically. And so that leads to those sick days and all of the turnover, all of those things. And so as a leader, it's not only beneficial for leaders themselves to be super regulated so they can lead properly because stress trickles down, but also to ensure that they have environments that support people being able to regulate their nervous system because there's just so many detriments when we're not regulated.
Yeah, I would love to have a team that is not operating from fight, flight, or freeze, and that is operating from a calm and healing and a place of wisdom and compassion because their decision making is elevated. And so I can trust my team to go out and make whatever decision needs to be made for the greater good, for the benefit of all. It seems like a win win to me. And when you said should, the word should is, I've heard that quite a bit, in the coaching space too. Not you should, but I invite or I offer you to do this. I started laughing inside because I think the most often I use the word should is in my personal relationships. you know, and I feel like that's where we all do. We hear it from our mothers probably the most. That was just a funny thing that came up for me while you were sharing that. So I think if we can nail this in our personal lives with our personal relationships, because I know for me the most I'm ever triggered is if I'm in conflict with like in a personal relationship. That is the most affected I have personally felt. That's probably my learning in my life as well. But I also recognize that there's some experiences at work that I've gone through and I know people have gone through that are very, career trauma. And so if we can take these tools and start utilizing them, I think that's a big help. And thank you for sharing this with us today. So before I pull a card for everyone and a message for everyone from the universe, what is one thing you hope listeners will take away from our conversation today?
I hope that people understand that they are nothing to be fixed. Their body, whether they have anxiety, whether they have social anxiety, where they have depression, your body is working at all times to keep you protected and at its level of perceived safety. And so rather than trying to fix yourself, you'll be better off trying to understand and more deeply connect to yourself. And that way you're not inducing shame, right? And an extra layer of emotion to process, but you're also accepting all parts of yourself and accepting that your body sometimes goes into survival mode, but sometimes it has the capacity to be open and connected.
Really good. I'm going to ask you one more question because I think about this a lot and I'm wondering what your take is on this. In a lot of the spaces of spirituality, there's a lot of coaching courses offered, especially in the life coaching space, not executive coaching. are like manifesting money, or what are your intentions and how can you manifest your best life? Like the word manifest, right, is used a lot. And there's all these books and all of these things about money wounds and different things like that. And I feel like I'm so glad you're sharing this, because what happens is, okay, so I buy this book and I do all these money rituals, and then nothing happens. I didn't get the $1 million whatever in the money manifesting book. I'm making all this up right now. What happens with some of these things that I see in this space is they say, "Oh, well, you weren't aligned. You didn't do the full work. Like your energy wasn't fully aligned with bringing that into your life." So it kind of puts the blame back onto the person. I've seen this happening a lot as this stuff has become really popular in pop culture on Instagram and things like that. Well, I think that produces some form of feelings of shame. Oh, I didn't do this right. It's me. I'm not attracting abundance. I'm not. What are your thoughts on that and how that relates to regulating our nervous system and all of these things that you're talking about today?
Yes. And that has been really difficult in the marketing of my business because I've been in coaching programs where they're like, speak to people's pain points. And for me as a somatic practitioner, I don't want to activate people. I want to bring a sense of regulation to people and just have them know that there's options, not that there's something wrong with them and they have to fix it. Right. So I think you're right. And there's some truth. And then I guess exploitation in what these people are saying. Like, it is a true fact that when we were in shutdown, the emotions that are associated with being in a shutdown state have a lower vibration than emotions when we're in an open ventral vagal state. And so we know that when we're vibrating higher, we attract good things. So there's sort of there's a connection to our nervous system states and what we can attract in life. But again, it's causing people to think, and this is kind of capitalistic, that they have to purchase something or change in order to get to the desired goal. And it's not about changing, rather, it's acceptance and creating capacity to hold those uncomfortable sensations connected to the past. But they're never going to go away. It's about creating the capacity to hold them. And so I think that's what a lot of people, even when we're talking about the nervous system regulation world, everyone's like, regulate to get rid of those sensations. That's the first step in teaching your body the flexibility of shifting from a stressful to non-stressful state, but it's not the whole picture. Part of the solution that involves sitting with your sensations and holding them and creating capacity to hold more and more of them. So all that to say is I agree that marketing that speaks to pain points, I know that people need to make a living and it's what everyone does, right? But it does induce shame in people, unfortunately, but that's what gets people to act.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in as an entrepreneur, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I constantly play with casting a vision for others rather than trying to speak to pain points when inviting in executive coaching clients. And, we don't get it right all the time, but the fact that we are aware and working towards casting that vision versus remind. I had a mentor one time, and she was really big on casting the vision over talking about the pain points like you were saying. And one of the best analogies she said was, and this is in a different space, but she said the woman that is wearing her tight jeans doesn't want to be reminded her jeans are tight. If you're selling weight loss or, whatever, she was using that as an example. She wants to know what it feels like when her jeans aren't tight anymore, or when what does that feel like, and try to, like, cast that vision and leave room for the unimaginable. I got off on a big tangent with you, but I'm really into that right now, and really, really into exploring that, because I do think there is some shame producing things with some of these things, and we need to talk about it. Okay, I'm gonna close my eyes. I have my virtual journal prompt card deck. I'm flipping through the cards. It's on Deckable, and I'm gonna pick a card for us. It's from Create Magic at Work. A message for everyone today listening. Okay, we got power. And the affirmation is, I make wise decisions. I love that we got this because we were talking about expanding the big picture. So the affirmation is, I make wise decisions, keeping the big picture in mind. So that's our affirmation for everyone listening. And this card is inspired by the ego, by the way. I don't know if you can see there's an owl illustration on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this card power that I authored is inspired by the ego. Lauren, if someone has been avoiding an area of their life through indecision, what are some ways, perhaps somatic ways, that can help them move out of that?
That is a good question. So, if someone is avoiding something, it could be two different states. It could be a flight or it could be a freeze where you just feel paralysis, right? So, you either want to run away or you feel paralysis. So, I would say, first things first, on a somatic basis, understand what your body feels compelled to do. If you're feeling that mobilization energy, can you move? Or if you're feeling immobilized, how can you gently bring yourself to the present moment to tell yourself you're safe and then gently mobilize to get back to that open state? But deeper than that, it's about tuning into your body. So either doing a body scan or just witnessing your body and understanding where you're activated in your body. There's sensations connected to what you're avoiding, right? And so if you can pinpoint it, just tune into it. And just sometimes it's a matter of just saying, like, what do you have to show me? Or what do you have to tell me? And your body has wisdom. You'll see something or hear something or witness something that is letting you know what is scary about what you are avoiding. And then from there, it's a matter of, okay, what is my next action? Is it to take baby steps, right? Is it to maybe not do the thing, but keep on working deeper on myself so I can get there? But you're not avoiding the thing, you're avoiding the sensations connected with the thing, if that makes sense. That the sensations are sending your body into those stressful modes. I think another thing that's really powerful to do for talking about getting more cerebral is there's often a coupling that happens. And so if I do this, this will happen too. And so if you can uncouple the situation with something with what you think is going to happen and list other positive things that might happen, it's more motivating to do it, right? So an example is if I go to the gym, everyone's going to stare at me and I'm going to be paralyzed and not know where to work out. Remove that coupling and say, like, if I go to the gym, I'm going to feel better. If I go to the gym, I can see a friendly face and smile. If I go to the gym, I'm going to start to lose weight. It's about like reassociating the thing you're avoiding with something positive that can happen as well.
Yeah, I like that. Is that the same as reframing or telling a different story that we use in executive coaching?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to reframe, rewire, even if you're consistent about it. But absolutely, yeah.
Interesting. I think about some people that might be going through something that feels so heavy that they're having a hard time even reframing the story or reframing the truth that they're telling themselves, and figuring out what really is true here. And I think what I've learned from you today is it doesn't have to be this huge thing. It can just be rubbing my hands together for a little bit, adjusting my eyesight to look at the big picture. And then once I do a couple of those things, start exploring, what does this story really mean? What could a gift be in this? And what could that look like? And maybe start rewriting what we're telling ourselves. That's my takeaway.
That's exactly it.
Thank you. Yeah. If people want to work with you, I mean, this is incredible. I think that bringing someone like you into a team, an organization, privately, I mean, this is a lot better than the well-being initiatives I've seen that come from really good intention, but this seems like it has some real impact. So if people want to work with you, how can they connect with you?
Yeah. So my website is Harmona, www.harmona.org. It's spelled HARMONNA. They can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name is Lauren Dike, last name spelled Dike. And I'd be happy to connect.
Lauren, thank you so much for bringing your insights to all of the Create Magic at Work listeners. You definitely sent some magic to everyone today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you. It was great being here.
I want to thank each and every one of you for coming back every week to listen to a new episode of Create Magic at Work and really helping to support and advocate for healthy leaders, workplaces, and lives for all of us. If you want any information on how to connect with me, click on the link in the show notes. You'll get access to all of the social media links for Create Magic at Work. Stay following along for more amazing episodes where we help you improve productivity and profitability in the workplace and decrease stress. Sending magic to everyone, and see you next time.